The Barcelona airport was a whirlwind of chaos and noise. Travelers dragged suitcases across polished floors, voices overlapped in a symphony of languages, and the hum of announcements echoed through the terminal. Amid the frenzy, a young man stood quietly near the VIP lounge entrance. He wore a simple gray hoodie, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. A worn backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, and his dark eyes scanned the crowd with a calm, almost serene expression. At just 18 years old, he blended into the sea of faces, unnoticed by most. But this wasn't just any teenager. This was Lamine Yamal, the rising star of FC Barcelona, a prodigy whose name was already whispered in awe across stadiums worldwide. Yet, in this moment, he was just another traveler, seeking a quiet journey. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you love inspiring tales like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because tomorrow we've got another heartwarming story waiting for you. Lamine adjusted his backpack and stepped toward the VIP lounge entrance, his first-class ticket tucked in his pocket. He wasn't here to flaunt his status. He preferred to keep a low profile, especially after grueling training sessions. Today, he was flying to Madrid for a crucial La Liga match, but all he wanted was a moment of peace before boarding. The lounge promised that a sanctuary of plush seats, soft lighting, and quiet. At the entrance stood a burly security guard, his uniform crisp and his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. His name tag read, Carlos, and his face wore a permanent scowl, as if the world owed him something. Carlos scanned the crowd with narrowed eyes, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He prided himself on his ability to read people, to spot who belonged in the elite VIP lounge and who didn't. When his gaze landed on Lamine, his lip curled slightly. To Carlos, this kid looked out of place, too young, too casual, too different. "Excuse me, kid," Carlos said, stepping forward and blocking Lamine's path. His voice was loud enough to turn a few heads nearby. "This is the VIP lounge. You lost or something?" Lamine paused, his expression calm but curious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his ticket, holding it out politely. "I'm heading to the lounge," he said, his voice soft but steady. Carlos didn't even glance at the ticket. He leaned closer, his eyes raking over Lamine's hoodie and sneakers. "Yeah, right," he scoffed. "Kids like you don't belong here. Go find the economy check-in. It's that way." He jerked his thumb toward the crowded terminal. A few passers-by slowed their steps, sensing the brewing tension. A woman in a business suit frowned, clutching her briefcase. A young couple whispered to each other, their phones already in hand. Lamine, however, didn't flinch. He held the ticket out again, his gaze meeting Carlos's. "This is my ticket, first class." Carlos finally snatched the ticket, his movements sharp and impatient. He scanned it with a handheld device, expecting an error, but the screen flashed green, and a soft beep confirmed its validity. For a moment, Carlos's scowl faltered, but he quickly masked it with a forced laugh. "Must be some mistake," he muttered, handing the ticket back as if it burned his fingers. "You? First class? Come on, kid, who'd you borrow this from?" Lamine's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes held a quiet intensity. "It's mine," he said simply. "Can I go in now?" Carlos crossed his arms, his voice dropping to a condescending tone. "Look, I don't know how you got this ticket, but this lounge is for people who belong here. Important people, not some teenager who looks like he's here to clean the place." The words hung in the air like a slap. The woman in the business suit gasped softly, and the young couple began filming discreetly. A murmur rippled through the nearby crowd, but Lamine didn't react. He stood still, his posture relaxed, as if the insult hadn't touched him. "I just want to get to my flight," he said, his voice calm but firm. Carlos smirked, sensing he had the upper hand. Yeah? Then stop wasting my time. Step aside, kid, or I'll call backup. He gestured toward the terminal, his tone dripping with authority. The tension was palpable now. The crowd grew larger, some whispering, others recording. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit, clutching a coffee cup, stepped forward. "Hey, ease up," he said to Carlos. "The kid showed you his ticket. Let him through." Carlos turned, his eyes narrowing. "Mind your business, sir," he snapped. "I'm doing my job. This kid doesn't belong here, and I'm not letting him waltz in like he owns the place." The man in the suit frowned, but didn't push further. The crowd murmured louder, and the young couple's camera zoomed in. Lamine sighed softly, adjusting his backpack. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "I just want to go to the lounge." Carlos laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Trouble? You're already causing it by standing here. Look at you, hoodie sneakers, acting like you're somebody. Go back to where you came from, kid." The racist undertone in his words was unmistakable. The woman in the business suit stepped forward now, her voice sharp. "That's enough," she said. "You're crossing a line." Carlos glared at her. "I'm crossing a line? This kid's the one trying to sneak into a place he doesn't belong. You think I haven't seen this before? People like him always try to game the system." Lamine's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't raise his voice. "I'm not sneaking anywhere," he said. "I paid for my ticket, just like everyone else." Carlos rolled his eyes. "Paid for it? Sure, kid. Let's not play games. Step aside, or I'm calling security." The situation was spiraling. The crowd was now a small mob, phones raised, voices overlapping. The young couple streamed the confrontation live, their comments filled with outrage. "This is disgusting," the woman whispered to her partner. "He's just a kid." But Lamine wasn't just a kid. He was a star, a prodigy, a symbol of hope for millions. Yet, in this moment, he was reduced to a target of Carlos's prejudice. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the crowd briefly before returning to Carlos. "Call whoever you need to," he said calmly. "I'm not moving until I'm allowed in." Carlos's face reddened. He reached for his radio, his voice booming. "I need backup at the VIP lounge entrance. We've got a problem here." The crowd gasped. The woman in the business suit shook her head, muttering, "Unbelievable." The man in the suit stepped closer, his coffee forgotten. "You're making a mistake," he told Carlos. "Let the kid through before you embarrass yourself." Carlos ignored him, speaking into his radio. "Yeah, some kid's trying to force his way into the lounge. Send someone quick." Lamine stood his ground, his backpack still slung over one shoulder. He could have pulled out his phone, shown his Instagram with millions of followers, or mentioned his name, but he didn't. He chose silence, letting the situation unfold. His calmness was unnerving, a stark contrast to Carlos's growing agitation. Moments later, 2 more security guards arrived, their expressions stern. One, a younger man named Javier, glanced at Lamine and then at Carlos. "What's going on?" he asked. Carlos pointed at Lamine. "This kid's trying to sneak into the VIP lounge with a fake ticket or something. He doesn't belong here." Javier frowned, looking at Lamine's ticket, which Carlos had tossed onto the counter. He scanned it again, and the green light flashed. "The ticket's valid," Javier said quietly. "What's the problem?" Carlos's eyes widened. "The problem? Look at him. Does he look like he belongs in first class? He's probably using someone else's ticket." Javier hesitated, glancing at Lamine, who met his gaze with that same calm intensity. "Sir," Javier said to Lamine, "can you show some ID?" Lamine nodded, pulling out his passport and handing it over. Javier opened it, his eyes scanning the details. For a moment, his expression changed. Something like recognition flickered across his face. He leaned toward Carlos and whispered, This is Lamine Yamal. Carlos froze. Who? Javier lowered his voice. Lamine Yamal, the Barcelona player. You know, the kid who's been tearing up La Liga? Carlos's face drained of color. He snatched the passport, staring at the name as if it were a foreign language. No way, he muttered. This can't be him. Lamine remained silent, watching the exchange. The crowd was buzzing now, some catching Javier's whisper. The young couple's live stream exploded with comments. Is that Lamine Yamal? Oh my God, this guy's in trouble! Carlos handed the passport back, his hands trembling slightly. Look, kid, he said, his voice softer now. I didn't know who you were. Let's forget this, okay? You can go in. But Lamine didn't move. He looked at Carlos, his eyes steady but piercing. You didn't need to know who I am, he said, his voice low but firm. You should have treated me like a person, like you treat everyone else. The words hit like a thunderbolt. The crowd fell silent, phones still raised, capturing every second. The woman in the business suit nodded, her eyes glistening. The man in the suit clapped softly, a gesture of respect. Carlos opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around, seeing the disapproving stares, the cameras, the weight of his mistake crashing down. I'm sorry, Carlos stammered, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean... I was just doing my job. Lamine shook his head slightly. Your job isn't to judge people by how they look, he said. Your job is to let them through when they have a ticket. Like me. Carlos swallowed hard, his scowl gone, replaced by a mix of shame and panic. Javier stepped forward, his tone professional but firm. Sir, please step into the lounge. We'll handle this. Lamine nodded, adjusting his backpack. As he walked past Carlos, he didn't gloat or glare. He simply moved forward, his head held high, his dignity intact. The crowd parted for him, some whispering in awe, others clapping softly. The young couple followed, their camera still rolling, their stream now flooded with thousands of viewers. Inside the VIP lounge, the atmosphere was starkly different. Plush, leather seats, soft jazz playing in the background, and the faint clink of champagne glasses. Lamine found a quiet corner, set his backpack down, and pulled out a small notebook. He began jotting down thoughts, his pen moving steadily, as if the confrontation outside hadn't fazed him, but it had. Deep down, he felt the sting of Carlos's words, the weight of being judged for his age, his appearance, his heritage. Yet, he chose to channel it into focus, into the game he'd play tomorrow. Back outside, Carlos stood frozen, his radio silent in his hand. Javier and the other guard exchanged glances. You messed up, man, Javier said quietly. That's Lamine Yamal. The kid's a legend. Carlos ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. I didn't know, he muttered. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. That's why he's different, Javier said. He didn't need to tell you who he is. You should have just done your job. The crowd began to disperse, but the young couple's video was already going viral. Clips of Carlos's insults, Lamine's calm response, and the reveal of his identity spread like wildfire across social media. Hashtags like Lamine Yamal and Respect for All trended within hours. Fans flooded the comments with praise for Lamine's composure and outrage at Carlos's behavior. Inside the lounge, a flight attendant approached Lamine, her smile warm and genuine. Mr. Yamal, she said softly, it's an honor to have you with us. Can I get you anything? Lamine looked up, his expression softening. Just water, please, he said, and thank you. The attendant nodded, her eyes lingering on him with respect. As she walked away, a businessman in a nearby seat leaned over. "I saw what happened out there," he said. "You handled that with more class than most adults could. Respect, young man." Lamine gave a small smile. "I just wanted to get to my flight," he said. "That's all." The businessman shook his head, impressed. "You're going places, kid, not just on the field." As the boarding call for the Madrid flight echoed through the lounge, Lamine gathered his things. He walked toward the gate, his steps steady, his focus unshaken. But the story wasn't over. Carlos's actions had set off a chain reaction that would change more than just one moment. At the gate, a small crowd had gathered, not passengers, but airport staff. Word had spread, and a few recognized Lamine as he approached. A young baggage handler whispered to his colleague, "That's him, the Barcelona kid." A cleaner paused her work, her eyes wide with admiration. Lamine nodded politely as he passed, unaware of the impact he'd already made. Meanwhile, Carlos sat in a small office near the terminal, his supervisor pacing in front of him. "Do you realize what you've done?" the supervisor snapped. "That was Lamine Yamal. The Lamine Yamal. And you humiliated him in front of a crowd." Carlos stared at the floor, his hands clasped tightly. "I didn't know," he whispered. "He didn't look like a star." The supervisor threw his hands up. "That's not the point. You judged him because of his age, his clothes, his skin, and now it's all over the internet. The airline's getting slammed, and you're the face of it." Carlos's face crumpled. I thought I was protecting the lounge." "You weren't protecting anything," the supervisor said. "You were abusing your power. We've had complaints about you before, Carlos. This isn't the first time." Carlos's eyes widened. "What? What do you mean?" The supervisor sighed. "You've been flagged for similar incidents, profiling passengers, making snap judgments. But this is a disaster. You're suspended pending a full investigation." Carlos slumped in his chair, the weight of his actions sinking in. Outside, the world was reacting. The viral video had reached millions, sparking debates about prejudice, respect, and the power of humility. Fans of Lamine flooded social media with messages of support, sharing clips of his goals, his interviews, his journey from a kid in Rocafonda to a global star. "This is why Lamine is special," one tweet read. "He didn't need to shout his name. He let his character speak." On the flight to Madrid, Lamine sat by the window, the city lights fading below as the plane climbed into the night sky. He pulled out his notebook again, jotting down thoughts about the game, his family, his dreams. The confrontation with Carlos lingered in his mind, but he refused to let it define him. He'd faced worse racist chants from rival fans, doubts about his age, pressure to prove himself. Each time, he responded the same way, with his game, with his heart, with his silence. Back at the airport, Carlos sat alone in the office, his phone buzzing with notifications. Messages from coworkers, friends, even strangers flooded in. "You're trending for all the wrong reasons," one read. "How could you treat him like that?" another said. The harshest came from his sister. "I'm ashamed of you, Carlos. Mom raised us better." Carlos buried his face in his hands, the reality of his mistake overwhelming him. He replayed the moment in his mind. Lamine's calm eyes, his steady voice, the crowd's stares. He'd thought he was in control, but he'd only exposed his own flaws. The next day, the story exploded. News outlets across Spain and beyond covered the incident, with headlines like "Barcelona Star, Humiliated at Airport," and "Lamine Yamal's Class Shines in Face of Prejudice." Pundits praised Lamine's composure, while the airline issued a public apology, promising a full review of their policies. Carlos's suspension became permanent, and he faced a wave of public backlash. But the story didn't end with punishment. Lamine, true to his character, spoke out in a post-match interview, after scoring a stunning goal against Real Madrid. "I don't hold grudges," he said, his voice steady. "What happened at the airport was wrong, but I hope that man learns from it. We all make mistakes. It's what we do after that matters." The words resonated worldwide. Fans shared the clip, calling Lamine not just a star but a role model. Schools in Barcelona used the story as a lesson in respect and humility. The young couple's video became a symbol of standing up to prejudice, inspiring others to share their own stories. Months later, Carlos sat in a community center, volunteering at a youth soccer program. He'd lost his job, his reputation, but he was trying to rebuild. One day, a group of kids ran past, kicking a ball, their laughter filling the air. One of them, a boy with a Barcelona jersey, stopped and looked at him. "You know Lamine Yamal?" the boy asked, eyes wide. Carlos nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Yeah," he said softly. "I met him once. He's a good guy." The boy grinned and ran off, unaware of the weight behind Carlos's words. For Carlos, it was a chance to learn, to grow, to see people not for how they looked, but for who they were. Lamine's story became more than a viral moment. It was a lesson etched in hearts around the world. True greatness isn't about shouting your name, but about carrying yourself with dignity, even when others try to tear you down. Lamine Yamal didn't just walk through that airport lounge. He walked through a storm and came out shining. So, dear viewers, what did you think of this story? Would you have stood up for Lamine like the crowd did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and let's spread the message of respect together. So, dear viewers, what did you think of this story? Would you have stood up for Lamine like the crowd did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and let's spread the message of respect together.